Hey there, I'm Brandon Janoski, one of the managing partners here at Stadia Ventures. I'm glad you're here. You have been invited to view this show because someone in the Stadia family thinks maybe you should apply to the Stadia Accelerator, or you've reached out to a member of the Stadia team directly wanting to learn more. Either way, thank you for taking time out of your day to learn more about Stadia and our Business Development Accelerator program. The goal of this content is, of course, to give you a quick tour around Stadia Ventures because we're not your typical VC fund or just another accelerator program. Stadia is more than that. We're the only global network that will give you an unfair advantage in the world of sports and esports innovation. Now, I'd like to actually show you who we are and what we're about, and then ultimately find out together if Stadia is even a good fit for you and your business right now. We aren't right for everyone, and that's okay. You'll often hear me say that timing is everything. First, a little more about us. We are Stadia Ventures, the nexus of sport, investment, and innovation. We think reputation and relationships are everything. We're a community of exceptional entrepreneurs, industry partners, and investors that are driven to create sustainable transformation in the world of sports and esports. We are pure velocity for your organization. We crowdsource expert feedback to partner with innovative teams who are solving real-world problems. We surround our portfolio with curated teams of world-class mentors that help them evolve their businesses. We cultivate C-suite connections that deliver tangible value for companies, partners, and investors. We have a proven track record of investing in diverse and thriving companies that successfully raise capital. We are committed to continually supporting our portfolio long after they join the Stadia family. Today, we've invited a few members of the Stadia family to share their stories. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Julia Campbell, the Director of Acceleration at Stadia Ventures. Our accelerator is designed to launch sports and esports startups to the next level through the combination of investment, mentoring, and connections to the top industry executives in North America and across the world. Twice a year, we open an application window and receive submissions from everywhere. We're looking for the best sports and esports startups that have traction. We know that traction can mean a lot of different things. It could be monthly active users, downloads, pilots, betas, sales, or channel partnerships. We want to hear what it means to you. So what is the Stadia Accelerator? Think of it like an executive MBA program. We understand that you may have friendships to maintain, family members to care for, and a business to run. So we approach this with 7 multi-day sessions spread evenly over 14 weeks. We keep your attention from Wednesday to Friday every other week, and then send you back to reality to implement and iterate for the next week and a half. Throughout the pandemic, we ran awesome virtual programs. Now we transitioned to a hybrid program, and we're excited to spend even more time in person going forward, likely in either St. Louis, Missouri or Frisco, Texas. During our 14-week program, we surround you with a bespoke mentor team. No two are the same. These mentors are senior leaders and innovators in business and sport who are there to challenge you, support your goals, and help you grow your business on a weekly basis. They'll work with you through the entire program and often beyond. Alongside your mentor team, we also carefully curate some of the biggest names in sports, esports, and business as guest speakers. These are private sessions exclusively for you and your fellow cohort members, designed to give you an incredible level of access. These speakers don't do it because they like to hear themselves talk. Instead, they love to help and are willing to share unique insights and guidance around how they leverage innovation in their industry. They're also eager to learn from you. You can consider the Accelerator program a customized tour around the ecosystem, including teams, leagues, brands, governing bodies, and more. With feedback from these entities and subject matter experts, you'll hone your pitch, remaster your value proposition, define your capital plan, and more. We challenge you to dream big with us and set goals to accomplish a few key things in 14 weeks that might otherwise take 14 months on your own. At the end of the program, you'll have the chance to share your accelerated business with the world at our global demo day. Here you'll pitch to an audience of investors, C-suite executives, and other leaders of the ecosystem. Your journey doesn't end with demo day though. After the Accelerator, you are forever a member of the Stadia family. Whether you are looking for business development inroads, strategic advice, or connections to capital, we will always be here for you.
In short, we run a unique business development boot camp twice per year. We invest $100,000 in each company, and we're constantly searching for the next 5 startups to take through the program. Now, my partner Joe Pimmel will walk you through our investment model.
Hello. If we haven't met before, I'm Joe Pimmel, one of the managing partners here at Stadia Ventures. When it comes to how our initial investments are structured, there are really just two distinct parts to highlight: a cash investment of up to $100,000 and a sweat equity investment representing the value of the Accelerator programming, mentorship, and the network that we bring to bear. For the cash investment, while we usually invest in pre-Series A rounds of funding, we are generally round agnostic, and we will look to invest cash into whatever open round of funding the startup has. If the startup isn't currently raising capital, then we will work with the founders to quickly find common ground on terms for our cash investment. There is no true consistent structure. We have invested in convertible notes, safes, and both preferred and common stock in our history. For the sweat equity investment, we generally receive 3 times the value of the cash investment that we make in the startup. To use an illustrative example, if we are investing $100,000 cash in a company, then we'll also receive an additional $300,000 worth of equity in the company for the value of our sweat. Typically, this second piece is denoted in the form of common stock warrants, or, if easier for the startup, in the form of a convertible note or a safe. It is important to note 2 things about this sweat equity. First, it only occurs as part of Stadia's initial investment as the company is participating in the Stadia Accelerator program. Second, we paper this sweat equity separately from our cash investment because we want to avoid the impression that Stadia is investing at a much lower valuation than prior investors in the company, or artificially disrupting the company's share price. Most of our companies have already raised significant capital prior to entering the Stadia program, and we want to be additive, not disruptive, to their cap table. Following that initial investment, our goal is to at least maintain our pro rata ownership through follow-on investments in future rounds in companies that are performing at a high level. These subsequent cash investments do not have any sweat equity component to them. Hopefully, this gives you a brief snapshot of how we invest at Stadia, but we are always happy to share more information as needed.
It's important that we address the investment model up front so we can spend the majority of our time focused on helping great founders go farther, faster. We have 2 of those entrepreneurs with us today. My colleague Art is joined by 2 Stadia portfolio company founders, Kat and Masa. These 2 founders have been in your shoes. They deliberated joining the Accelerator, submitted a compelling application, produced all of the due diligence we requested, mastered finalist pitch day, and completed the 14-week Accelerator program, all while operating their businesses and maintaining a work-life balance. And like so many in the Stadia family, these 2 were quick to offer their time to give back. We are so grateful for that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Art Chu, and today I'm joined by Kat Salazar, founder of WeThink from our fall 2021 cohort, and Masa Kabayama, founder of Uplift Labs from the spring 2020 cohort. I'll let each founder quickly introduce themselves with their elevator pitch. They've been kind enough to share a little bit about their experiences with Stadia Accelerator program and life after Stadia.
WeThink is a B2B2C team intelligence platform, and we're using proprietary surveys and assessments to measure and track social and emotional skills that teams need to perform better and teammates need to succeed and be their best in and beyond the team in multiple environments, including esports and sports.
Masa, how about you?
Yeah, so at Uplift, our vision is to improve human movement performance and movement health using just ubiquitous devices we all carry around in our back pockets, such as our iPhones or any smartphone. So specifically, we help improve athletic performance, as well as starting to look into how we can reduce injuries for people to get back to the sports that they love.
And Masa, well, I'll keep you with the microphone. So, how long have you been doing this with Uplift, and what has been some of the biggest challenges you've had as an entrepreneur and founder?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to make that concise, but so we've been doing it for a little over 4 years. And yeah, I mean, where to start, right, for the startup roller coaster story. But I would definitely, and this will tie in later to the Stadia story. But March 2020 was among the toughest months ever. I think half of my gray hair comes from that period. As everybody probably knows, sports was decimated, right, back March 2020 at the early onset of the pandemic. And so, unfortunately, where most of our contracts were put on hold, our sales engagements were put on hold or froze, or there was really no understanding where all of this would go. So, we had to kind of basically innovate out of that and do a lot of other things. But yeah, I would definitely say that was one of the most trying periods.
Kat, how about you? How did you get started, and how long have you been doing it, and what are some of the biggest challenges for you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, we think started in 2019, and I'm with you, Masa. There's been a lot of challenges as a startup, and particularly COVID was a big one. But at the same time, I think it's, for me, it's been that balance of embracing the chaos of a startup and all the different things that kind of hit you at once. Lack of capital, the need for more people always, especially in the earlier stages, and we're still in the earlier stages. Figuring out our tech, and for us in particular, we have a really flexible platform and assessment that's valuable in multiple different verticals. So really assessing our opportunities and figuring out where to best focus. And I guess that plays into the really embracing the chaos, at the same time being intelligent about which opportunities that you select, which is a function of, myself as the founder and CEO, but also having the right advisors and mentors to help filter through the amount of information as well as messiness that's coming at you always, right? And the multiple decisions that you have to make that range from, stupidly simple, which invoice to pay first, to, massive, who to take on as an investor, who are we going after as a market first, et cetera. So I think that biggest challenge.
And that kind of leads a little bit into Stadia. So why Stadia? Why did you apply to the Stadia Accelerator program?
So good question, actually, and that plays into something that I just said. I have many fabulous advisors and mentors, and one of my favorite said you should consider Stadia Ventures. And so he made an introduction, and I took a look at Stadia's program, and honestly, at first, I mean, we were playing in the esports space, and I thought maybe this isn't right for us. But I got to meet you, Art, and the rest of the Stadia crew, Joe and Brandon and Dana, and I was very impressed by the people. And to me, this is my third endeavor as an entrepreneur. What I found is a core differentiator, that is between success and failure, the people that you surround yourself with. And so the thing that hooked me for Stadia, beyond the value propositions that you tout as an accelerator, are the people that you've allowed me to interact with, and the team at Stadia itself, and how involved they've been and were at the beginning and through that application process, which I found of all the accelerators that I've had a chance to interact with, or even investors, I found that to be a useful endeavor. And I don't know that I could say that about many other application processes.
Wow. Okay. That's a seal of approval. I love it. Useful. Excellent. Masa, how about you? Why Stadia?
Yeah. So this was probably about a year and a half to 2 years into the company. We just had our MVP. We applied to the startup competition at MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and actually were nominated as part of the last, final 5. And during that time, we started to meet people who, talked about Stadia. That was sort of our first foray into hearing of, the Stadia brand and the magic. But I think what really drove it home is we continued to apply for sports, related competitions. The next one that we got in was the initial cohort for Sports Tech Tokyo. And so, it's kind of hard to believe that this was only maybe less than 3 years ago, because what's time now during the pandemic. But so we were there in Tokyo, and again, a number of trusted people there all spoke very highly of Stadia. So did a bit of research, was enticed enough, and also, was recommended and with referrals to apply. We actually didn't get in for the first application, which was like, pretty bone crushing, right? Mostly because I think Stadia has a really high bar of the type of startups that it accepts, especially wanting to have traction in the market and revenue. And so we were super early, and I get it back, looking back, but, back then it was kind of sucked. But the thing that was amazing were two things that happened. One actually was you, Art. Even though we didn't get accepted, you kept, following up on us and saying, hey, maybe there's certain things that I can make introductions to you for example, Driveline Baseball, which is very much in our space, and also Titleist Performance Institute, TPI. And in fact, Dave Phillips over at TPI is now an advisor of the company due to your kind introduction. And for those who don't know Dave Phillips, he's also the swing coach for what was most recently the #1 PGA pro in the world, John Rahm. So like the caliber of people that the network that Stadia has is, pretty self-explanatory with just those two. But even more, I just had lunch with Bill Powell, who was a partner, is a partner at Stadia. And he even took the time to come in one of his busy, Silicon Valley kind of meetings to look, to come to our office in a lab back when we had one. And he kind of coached us saying, hey, don't give up. It's very common that a lot of Stadia portfolio companies try not just once, but even twice. So give it a go. You should shoot for the spring 2020 cohort. And we did. And then the second time around, we actually got accepted.
That's great. We often talk about the relationships, and it's just like it's in business or in life. You get out of it what you put into it, and it's a really important part of the program. Kat, what would you say would you remember as one of the more or some of the more impactful parts of the Stadia Ventures Accelerator program?
Sure. I was extremely impressed by and found it was enormously useful. The mentor sessions that we had, and we were virtual because it was during the pandemic. But those mentor sessions were so incredibly useful. And what I found so impressive was that every one of my mentors was more than willing to meet with me for a second time. Week after week. So I set up one-on-ones with all of my mentors every week outside of that mentor call. And that was invaluable because it allowed me to interact with everybody's expertise in specific and nuanced ways. So to your point, Art, you get into it, what you put out, you get out of it, what you put into it. Right. And there's so much willingness from the mentors and the entire Stadia team to be present and really help figure out, what is the problem that we need to solve right now and how can my expertise best help you. So I think that kind of consistent interaction allowed me to learn a lot of what I specifically needed to learn. So it's that kind of consistent availability that I think I was most impressed by. So there's not one big kind of explosive thing, but I found that frequency really impressive.
Fantastic. Masa, how about you? What would you say are some of the more impactful parts of your experiences with Stadia?
Yeah, definitely going back to the first question about the challenges that a founder CEO faces. Going back to that March time period. So when we applied for the spring cohort, we actually pitched in person in January, flew to St. Louis. Everything was done in person. And we got accepted, I believe, in February. And then the very first week was actually the first week of March. We were, again, in person, right? Because Stadia was all about in person back then. Then the whole world started to shut down, and equally with the US. So the good news is we did have, 1 week a little less than a week together. And then you guys were pretty innovative and fast to move virtually. So we were part of that inaugural, virtual cohort. And I mentioned this because a few things. One, things were tough then, right? We had no visibility into what was going to happen, especially in the area of sports, for that matter, for a multiple number of things. But to have this tight-knit community, and to, Kat's point, the mentorship is amazing, the partners are amazing. Even at times when there was so much uncertainty, people were always willing to help. And it was almost kind of therapeutic in a way. It was sort of my go-to place where I can have some semblance of sanity during those sessions. So that I would say was very extremely helpful to have that kind of these people to fall back on in really hard times. The second is that we were in midst of kicking off our fundraise for our next convertible note seed round. We got some initial funding, and then boom, the pandemic hit, everything froze. So quite honestly, we only had a limited number of runway, which timed pretty much to the, after the accelerator. I mean, what CAPS Accelerator program, of course, is the big investor pitch day. And so it was really cutting it close towards that investor pitch day. And in fact, back then we were doing a 1.7 million, seed round, so something fairly modest. And 44% of the funds raised came from Stadia and the Stadia network. So that definitely helped us get to the next level of the company. And then from a sales business development perspective, again, just the golden platinum level connections that you guys have. We had just you can count with both hands level of potential clients when we entered the accelerator. When we exited the accelerator, we had maybe close to 3 digits of people we can call on. And in fact, 56% of that pipeline really came from, Stadia. So those metrics, I think, really, speak for themselves. And just also another note, right now we're in the closing phase of our priced round, our Series Seed. I can't quite disclose what it is yet because we're going to do a press release, but it's in the tune of a couple $1 million. And here again, the Stadia network produced 32% of that total multi-million round that we're about to announce and close. So whether it's fundraising, business development, and just hey, someone you can go to when times are tough, Stadia was always there, and we're extremely thankful for that.
That's excellent. So, Kat, I'm curious that as an experienced entrepreneur, you've probably heard of or maybe researched other accelerator programs. So, how would you say Stadia differs from other accelerator programs? What makes it unique?
Sure. What I wanted to avoid with other accelerator programs, and I've turned down offers before from other programs, was the kind of boot campy, MBA in a nutshell. Everybody goes through the same program. If I can YouTube it or it's something I already learned, I'm just not interested. And they kind of just feel like, mills, where they're just hoping a certain percentage of their investments will eventually make it. And what felt super unique about Stadia that I was so impressed with, and honestly, through that application process, I had a hard time believing until I got into the program, and it was better than I even expected, was that it could be tailored to my company and my needs, and me specifically as the kind of entrepreneur that I was, to help solve the problems, the biggest challenges that I was particularly facing, with a network that they were willing to use. Masa made some excellent points with incredible numbers behind what Stadia has been able to do, and in terms of the network and relationships that they have that are useful, right? And that they're willing to put to use for you. I had to suspend my own perception of accelerators, and the application process again helped me to do that. And it seemed like it was worth the bet for me, because if I could really get a chance to focus on business development, really get a chance to, alongside of the mentors and the Stadia crew, tailor a program to my needs, that's a unique and incredible opportunity. And it really was. I walked away with a phenomenal advisor that was one of my mentors, also funding from my mentors. And now I'm part of a second accelerator with Stadia that's been a source of great opportunity for me and my company.
Masa, how about you? In terms of comparing Stadia to other accelerator programs, what are some of the key points in your mind?
Yeah, so I think for me, the first thing that I would think of, and maybe for the audience, do you really need an accelerated program? I don't think it's for everybody. I think for some people, you have, and I say this because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of commitment that you have to dedicate to get most out of it, just like anything in life, I guess. And so Stadia makes sure that the accountability is also very much on the founder side. So especially when you're virtual, right, you can do this kind of lightweight and kind of show up for some meetings and kind of not, and you're just not going to get like through the rigor that you would hope for, out of it, and maybe the end results. So there's that commitment aspect. I also think for us, what was really new and quite novel was that even before, I think it was still during like almost due diligence, right? Where Stadia was looking at your numbers and like referrals and seeing before they officially invite you in. They were also very open, and you guys were like, "Hey, we have a few founders who went through the program who are ahead of you, and if there's any other people like in our portfolio and our website that you want to contact, we're happy to do that." And that transparency, I think, says a lot. And I think that built trust instantly, especially with those people who went through previous cohorts. They all, of course, had very, very positive things to say. So that curated network, I think, says something. And I kind of forgot the last thing I was about to mention, but yeah, I think those were definitely highlights. And yeah, I didn't like post Stadia. To me, it seems like a redux to Kat's point that we have been fortunately offered for more sports tech related accelerators, but at this point, we think we have enough momentum in the business that I don't feel like we really would get as much benefit versus where we were in time back in early 2020.
I'm curious. Talk about whether it's appropriate for you to apply to Accelerator program effort for prospective companies that may be watching. What sort of homework do you think that companies should do as they're making these decisions, whether they should go to? How should they prepare themselves, or what should they be looking for?
You got to really know why you need what you need, right? Like for us, we had two things very, very clearly in mind. We're still early. We haven't built a brand in kind of the sports tech world or the sports performance world. We thought by true nature of the word, Stadia could help accelerate, especially those business development sales aspect. The second one is, as mentioned, we had just kicked off funding. And so we were hoping to get some strategic investors, not just, money, but people who really understood this world, who's passionate, who are so, into the ability to make other connections, whether it's to business development or to other investors. And we've seen that from the numbers that I just mentioned earlier. And then, as Kat mentioned, the mentorship thing, so I guess there's three, is really important. In fact, I should mention another shout out, because that would be rude if I didn't. Another person that is now on our advisory board is Elise Sol, who was one of the first marketers, innovators at the NHL, right? In fact, I think she was one of the first kind of executive management team in pro sports. So she's come on board as an advisor, and we're so grateful to that. But again, a lot of that we didn't know. There was a bit of a leap of faith. But again, I think just that sounding board of all these portfolio companies speaking very, positively, said a lot. Yeah. Okay.
Kat, how about life after Stadia, the program? So now you've graduated. Does it all end there? I mean, how has your relationship with Stadia Ventures continued to this day?
It certainly hasn't ended, which I am infinitely grateful for. And y'all kept assuring me that it wouldn't end, and I again wasn't sure that would be the case, but it's definitely been true. So from everything from being able to continue with a lot of the advisors and mentors that I had as a part of my weekly sessions, to being able to reach out to the Stadia crew for questions, help, thoughts, with no hesitation from Stadia's side on how they could be of service, to now participating in a second accelerator with Stadia. I'm super grateful to be able to carry forward my journey alongside Stadia, and I see them as a consistent resource for me that I'm really grateful to have. So it definitely doesn't end once you graduate. I think there's a lot more potential, and as Masa continually makes that point, it is what you put into it, right? So it's I've reached out, and I'm here ready to be a part and continue to be a part of the Stadia family. Again, thankfully, I'm part of a second accelerator with Stadia that's been amazing. But I intend to continue to participate in the community, in the greater community, and build the relationships that I have at Stadia and in the Stadia network, because they're invaluable.
Masa, how about you? You've been graduated now for 2 years since your 2020 cohort. How has life been after the State Accelerator?
I think you guys really mean it when you talk about building community. I definitely see that. And, for those out there who are considering, Stadia, not to diss anybody, but, the partners are great, the mentors are great, but every, cohort that comes in, they're going to have to be focused on them, which is the rightfully thing to do. But at the same time, they don't forget us, right? They have these get-togethers, these, kind of alumni, events to tie us in. But I've got to say one of the most rewarding things also is that network you develop among your own cohort class, but also beyond that for those who came, before and after you. That entrepreneur to entrepreneur, because sometimes it's a hard, lonely journey, and just having people who've been there maybe 1 or 2 raises ahead of you, or even someone who's coming on your heels. That network is amazing. And then the last thing is you guys are Midwest values. And I think, having that really down to earth, I'm here in Silicon Valley, so there might be a little bit more panache where we are, but you guys are just direct, transparent, and just love those kind of Midwestern values that you very much, employ. So I'm very grateful and thankful for that.
This is a great discussion with Masa and Kat. Thank you so much for giving back, sharing your valuable insights. Great mentorship from the actual accelerator participants and entrepreneurs is the most valuable piece of input. Brandon will now be joined by a few of our most seasoned mentors.
Our mentors are talented executives and entrepreneurs from across many industries who work closely with our companies for the entire program. We go to great lengths to build mentor teams that we believe will not only complement the skills and style of the founders, but also supplement areas of weakness or where growth is needed. A big part of Stadia's magic is built into this endeavor. Please meet Sam Rudolph, who has mentored across 12 cohorts with Stadia. It's safe to say there aren't many people who have contributed more, seen more, or understand more deeply what we're all about than Sam. She's going to lead a quick chat with fellow mentors Rebecca and Ron. I hope you enjoy getting to know them.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam. I'm super excited to be here. As you probably figured out, I'm a very big fan of Stadia's. It's one of my favorite endeavors that I spend my time on, and I'm very grateful that they keep letting me come back so many times. Today, I'm joined by Ron Roy, another Stadia lead mentor, and Rebecca Langlois, another Stadia mentor as well. So before we get started, I'd love for both of you to introduce yourselves. Rebecca, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Hi. My name's Rebecca. I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've been working in sports marketing and innovation my entire career, and came from the NBA and a lot of agency work, and currently doing a ton in the esports space, which has been a phenomenal emerging technology that Stadia has also been spending a lot of time learning about and advising and mentoring on. So I've been working in the esports ecosystem for about 4.5 years.
Ron, you're up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ron Roy. I've had the pleasure of being with Stadia since the very, very first cohort. So I have seen all of the travels journeys that have happened since Tim and Art actually started the company. I think they deserve some shout outs because they're both awesome, awesome people. My background is actually in music, and did a lot of work with a lot of bands people have heard of, U2, David Bowie, Rolling Stones, around the technology side, ticketing and e-commerce and VIP experiences and fan clubs. And then got involved in the wine industry, got involved with the non-alcoholic craft beer industry. I got still involved 22 years later in the virtual 3D world industry. Yeah, so that's kind of my background. And I always say this, but the thing that I really was drawn to Stadia for was I really wish there were people like myself, Sam, and Rebecca back when I was in my 20s and 30s, because I was flying solo. When I decided to become an entrepreneur, there really wasn't a network. There wasn't help. There really weren't a lot of mentors, and just getting people's time was hard. So Stadia has just made, and I've seen the journey of so many companies and young entrepreneurs coming through the system. So, that's kind of my passion of why I'm here.
Absolutely. And thank you. One of the things that I think just sets Stadia apart from so many other accelerators, and probably any other accelerator, is just the focus on business development. We hear from so many founders who go through the process, and they can't believe how intensive and how much progress their businesses make over, the 12 or 13 week period. And so, either one, Ron, Rebecca, either one of you certainly jump in, but I'm kind of curious, what's it like being part of that journey?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think from every mentor, I think within Stadia looks at everything through a different lens. So I'll speak to the lens in which I'm informing, giving mentorship advice to. So coming from an agency advertising background, as well as being in-house at a pro sports team, I'm kind of looking at founders and the companies that they're bringing to the table through a lens of a go-to-market strategy. And I think sometimes what often happens is founders and their teams are so focused on an investment strategy and talking about things through an investment lens. How does it work? All of the details, very much the what and the how, and they forget the why. So I like to really kind of use that Simon Sinek model to really inspire founders to look at things through a lens of coming into the market, and is it going to be adoptable? And I think that's what sets me apart in terms of helping develop business. Also, I've worked on so many amazing brand clients over the years that have just amazing materials. So being able to help provide some guidance and advice on the marketing materials, the sales materials that these founders are bringing to the table.
Yeah, to add on to that too, I think from, as Sam talked about biz dev, one of the coolest things about Stadia is when we do put mentor teams together, there is so much diversity, and somebody with a financial background has a different opinion and flow and road mapping than somebody. Like, I look at myself as a marketeer at the end of the day. Rebecca and I got to mentor on a great company called We Think. We just brought it all the mentors brought a different set of tools and vision. But I also think we all came together to kind of, give the founders, a lot of things to think about, but also really what works in the real world. Because everybody I've ever seen come through is, where's the money? Give me some leads. I mean, everybody just kind of gets into that stage, and it's really like, hey, let's take a couple of steps back, and you're gonna get the money, you're gonna get the leads, you're gonna get the networking. But I think it is a diversity of, and I think the maturity of the mentors too that comes through Stadia that really helps. And also, I think a lot of what we do too is create different voices for different pitch decks for different audiences. And again, with the financial side, I'm not your guy, but I always know there's a team member there to really plug in great advice to the teams. And that's the thing too. We commit for 14 weeks. It's just not Friday sessions that we go through. It's the calls on Tuesday, the weekend calls, the emails, the advice. So a lot to absorb for founders, but Stadia does a great job of vetting these teams and who comes in and who mentors, and just keeping that flow of communication going. And so that's, I think, one of the exciting things about the Stadia platform.
Yeah. And one other thing that I think is really great is the team at Stadia knows the mentors and advisors at such an intimate scale that they're literally hand picking, like you talked about, a balance of school of thought, but also based on experience and personality, putting together the best team for each and every startup.
Absolutely. I think that's very well said, Rebecca, and thank you for saying it. Ron, you mentioned the amount of time that mentoring takes. It's not just the Friday sessions, it's the weekend, it's the emails, it's, et cetera. What makes you keep coming back?
It is those Friday sessions that make me come back. I'll tell you what really matters. I figured this out over the years, though. except for like one or two companies that, I mean, my first company, I won't mention who they are, but they ended up not making. I mean, they had the best intentions, but they didn't make it. But it is a long-term relationships. I mean, I stay in contact with all these teams, whether I was lead mentor or part of the mentoring team. And it is it's just so exciting seeing their journey. And just, really, because what we do, we all do this. We all have these discussions when we get together as mentors and talk, and we beat them up a little bit. We blow their business model up a little bit and then build them back up. That's kind of what we're there for. And if they listen to us, great. If they don't, we wish them nothing but the best of luck. But but it is the excitement of the newness. I mean, I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be mentoring a team that was focused on a sport I know nothing about, which is cricket. But I learned so much about the sport, and the mentors were great, and there was still a place to plug in my expertise in that. So, that's exciting to get into that. And then there's other teams that I mentor, like, this is so in my wheelhouse. I'm so excited about this. But but I think it's those long-term, relationships, and they come back, and I hear from somebody. The Go Wild guys just reached out to me. This is like 3 years, from 3 years ago, I met those guys, and they reached out to me. They invited me to a party. They're having some big kickoff parties. So those are the kinds of things, but that's why we do these things. So it's just, it's almost like you can't wait for the next cohort.
Yeah, exactly. I really don't even have anything to add to that. It's building those relationships, whether it's with other mentors on the team and the startups themselves and the people involved. And also just, I'm a lover of learning as well. I think Roy and I both, I just called you Roy, Ron Roy. We love to learn. Like
that's Mr. Roy. Yeah.
Mr. Roy. Yeah. Just being a lover of learning. I want to continually understand what is emerging in technology and innovation. And there's no better way to do that than listening to young people and young creative minds that are, really building the future.
Absolutely.
Can I add one thing? Can I add an exclamation point to what Rebecca said? So, no, but it also is the mentors getting to know the mentors. It's like, I've gained dozens and dozens and dozens of friends, people in my network, not only from a business side, but even from a social side. And now I've got my own network. If I've got questions, or I am looking for help with something, or I want some expertise, now I've got this wealth of people I didn't have before I got to Stadia. And everybody's one phone, especially when you mentor with the group, everybody's one phone call away. And, I haven't seen Rebecca, I think, in about a year, or 8 or 9 months, but I know, I could call her tomorrow and say, hey, I got some esports things going on. I pick your brain for half an hour. So that's one of the beauties of Stadia too, for our, for the more established people like us being the mentors. We get our own network, and we get to develop our own relationships.
Absolutely. I can't echo that enough. I think you're very much right. I've talked to, I'm a founder myself, and I talk to a lot of founders that they try to figure out, is Stadia the right program for me? And so I'm really curious, kind of from the mentor side, if you were mentoring them before they started the mentor part of the program, what would you tell them? Rebecca, I don't know if you want to go first.
Yeah, the biggest thing is being open for for feedback. Ron had said previously, like, it's not just about coming in and getting some dollars and getting a contact list for outreach. And we have, I have mentored companies in the past through Stadia and other programs that it's very clear that they're not leaning into the advice. So really the beauty of Stadia is the ability to have this completely non-objective viewpoint from industry leaders and thought leaders in the space. And, it helps make your company, your brand, your team better. So I think it's really a program for those who are okay with difficult conversations and some tough feedback at times, and people who really do want to evolve and grow, because you can always use LinkedIn if you want to just make connections with people. But this is a program in which you're going to be challenged, and your company. I haven't encountered a single Stadia cohort that did not completely evolve and elevate after going through this program. Every single one of them has just really gotten sharpened up and really honed in on their communication strategy, their go-to-market strategy, their elevator pitch, really becoming more polished and more well-rounded and really ready to go out and get those leads in an appropriate way. I mean, it's hard for me. I don't want to make an introduction to somebody in my network if I don't feel like a founder's quite ready. So we help them get ready.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't echo that more. And really, the last thing that Rebecca said, and I remember when we mentored Kat at We Think, you said that to her, like you said that very early on, which I think is a great thing to say, is you got to earn, as a mentor, you want to get access to my network. You've got to really, really understand how this works. Just empty your head of what you think works and listen. And we as mentors feel so much more accessible and wanting to connect people. And sometimes you're just good people, and sometimes not every meeting is a meeting that should happen. And
Right.
I think that we as mentors, that's the thing you get with Stadia. We've been around a long time. I mean, that's the thing. You don't see too many mentors in the group who are just right out of the startup ecosystem. These are, we've had exits and we've been part of startups, and a lot of us have been part of corporate. Some of us have been part of corporate America. So, but yeah, I think that's everything that Rebecca just said to answer that. Was spot on. That's the way I look at it.
And even like specific to Kat and her company at We Think, if we did like such a deep dive on communication strategy, developing tone of voice, value proposition, who that target audience is. I mean, we basically worked with, like literally hands deep in the mud all together as a team alongside her, and really got it to a place where, I mean, she was on fire excited when we were, finished going through that process of getting that deck in order. And coming from an agency background, if you tried to get a proposal right now to do that with a crew at an advertising agency, it would be a 6-month process, 3 to 6 month process, and you'd be paying a ton of money, like a ton of money. So, I mean, there's tangible, real value to being able to be a part of this program that, you could put a figure on that, which I think is another one of those major reasons to lean into a company like Stadia.
Can I put an exclamation on that too, Sam?
I like this. You're doing my job for me.
No, but one thing to add on to that is with Kat and We Think, we again, a team came together. The mentors were great. She was very mentorable. It was awesome. She took the professional criticism, but she got to a point at the end that actually some of the mentors actually invested in her company. So we got to see this journey. And one question I asked the two that did was, would you have invested in her, in the first couple of weeks? I just asked like a by the way question. Both of them said no, but we watched her development. And one of them said, I didn't even know, I honestly, if you gave me a test, I would have flunked it on what her company even did. But fast forward 12, 14 weeks later, they actually invested in her company. So there's my exclamation point.
I like that. I think that's a good place to end that question. Whenever I always level set with the founder before a new cohort, and I always tell them every cohort is different. I can't tell you what the challenges are going to be, where exactly what the goals are till we kind of get in this and get our hands dirty. But I always say around week 3 or 4, there's going to be a little dip. Everyone's going to be a little frustrated, and then we're going to come out of it and just rock it through the rest of the program. And so I'm curious, have you noticed any of those commonalities or anything that you would tell a founder before they start the program with us?
I mean, my side is, I always think it's communication, because, it is, and for mentors too, I said, I always tell founders, listen, some of your job is to keep the mentors pumped up, to keep the mentors engaged, because there's nothing worse than we're giving time, we're giving expertise. You've got 5 or 6 rock star professionals that you have access to for 14 weeks. And so if you don't communicate with us, or even if it's bad, even if it's like, I can't, I just got too busy, I'm fundraising, or something came up, I know it's going to have some deliverables, just let us know. I mean, we're not here to babysit. We're all adults. At the end of the day, this is your company. You are the chairman of the board, CEO, whatever your title is. But so you mean to the level setting of it. I mean, the first thing I always talk about is all communication, and it doesn't always have to be positive. Or, I really think that just kind of sets some expectations. But I also do, to your point, Sam, I do say, one of our jobs is to, unless you're the unicorn of all time in Stadia history and lore, we will find holes in what you're doing, and we will beat you up a little bit, and we will kind of, blow it up a little bit, and then we're going to build you back up to that point. So yeah, I think it's those early conversations about expectations have always, I thought, helped, and at least
Yeah.
I've worked on.
I agree. And I think, the biggest expectation that I have when it comes to working with founders is ensuring that they're doing the homework on those off weeks, because you're getting in front of people who are providing some really great advice and insight. And it's always been my expectation that they take that, they change, evolve, retool, whatever the advice is, so that the next time we meet, we've got something to react back to again. And that's iron sharpening iron, right? So if a founder's just going to listen, but not put in the work, week to week, then things aren't going to be able to be sharpened at the level that they could.
Yeah. And I think too, another thing too, every time
I knew it was coming. I didn't even try to talk.
Well, every time Rebecca talks, but the other thing with the founders is, and they beside us as mentors in Stadia, they have so many people chirping in their ears, and it's so important to let the mentors know. I just had this in my last cohort with our group, where things that we discussed, and all of a sudden there's some new thinking around what to do, and we're like, whoa, where'd that come from? This is the first I've heard of this in 5 weeks. So it is setting those expectations. No matter what direction your company's at, you got other investors, and you have employees, and you have people, you go to conferences, and you've been part of other incubators. People are always chirping in your ears. And I think all young mentors, at least they all, it's the bright, shiny object syndrome. Somebody's talking to me. I want to go learn more about that. I want to go here and do that. So, but just communicate that. I mean, not to mean that any of that stuff is wrong, but I think so much of that just comes back to, communication.
Favorite win at Stadia? No names, no company names, no founder names, but what are you most proud of that you've accomplished on one of your mentor teams?
Ooh, well, that's hard. I would say, oddly, the one that I worked with ended up, it didn't even end up becoming a company. They dissolved later on. However, probably the best project I've ever worked on in terms of really getting excited, really truly personally fulfilling, getting excited, really helping them evolve. And they had it was a phenomenal idea. It had a ton of traction. There were a few hangups, and ultimately with COVID, they couldn't last, but there was a really kick-ass platform that I got to work on, and the guys were amazing to work with. And some of them now are really great friends. So
mine is a company came in one sport, and then about halfway through getting a deep dive into the cohort, really learned a lot about their technology and some of kind of what I'll call side projects they were doing, but the technology was the technology. And we made a huge 180 pivot and took the focus off their main sport that they even got invested in by Stadia, turned them on to another sport. That company got sold. So, and they were just great guys to mentor, and super smart and so eager and always prepared. So they, my favorite one, when the teams can make it a little bit easier on you, and you're happy, there's nothing more happy than when they have an exit. I mean, it was such a great, and the heartfelt call I got from the founder was, I wish we recorded, because it was unbelievable. So yeah, so that was kind of that's my favorite. But they're all my babies, so I love them all equally.
You can't choose one.
I mean, and I will say there was a sports tech company. This was before I was mentoring, when I was just an advisor, but one of the very first organizations that I really got on fire for, I've been able to watch starting in sports tech, and now they are very successful in esports tech as well. So that's always really cool to watch companies in the space be able to take their technology and apply it into other industries. And not everything from traditional sports can translate into esports, but this one was pretty cool, pretty exciting to watch evolve.
I love that. All right, final question. In a word or a phrase, how would your mentees describe you? I'm going to go first. My favorite one someone described me with is they called me a bulldog, which I thought was kind of fun. I kept focusing on the problem. They didn't like that very much, though.
Gosh, I don't know if anyone's ever called me anything. Ron, has anybody called me anything? I don't know.
I mean,
maybe behind your back. But what would you guess they would say? How about that?
Well, I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends of mine that call me their professional fairy godmother, because anytime they're trying to solve a problem or come up with something, or need to get connected to somebody or get in somewhere, then I can usually get them the answer that they need, or the person that's going to give them the answer that they need.
I guess with mine, because I really hammer home, setting expectations and let it be said, let it be done. I'm trying to think what they would have called me, but stay, as much as we can within a cohort, kind of, I don't know, just somebody who just tries to stay on track to keep some organization going there. And I always go back to the same thing. Hey, these are the expectations we already set. This is nothing new. So I don't know what they would call me to do that, but probably pretty boring. Which
keeping the trains running is a very
yeah.
You're the conductor.
Then great mentors like Rebecca come in, and they just rock and roll when we all go at it for that 90 minutes. So that's the exciting part about that.
Well, thank you. This was so much fun. Rebecca, Ron, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. And I think it's just kind of a small sliver of what founders can expect when they work with us. We have a lot of fun. I think we all generally get along pretty well. And, I think I speak for everyone when I say that we just really love what we do, and we're grateful for the opportunity to keep coming back. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. And back to you, Brandon.
During the Accelerator, Stadia will introduce you to several partners who are experts in their field to help accelerate your business. These folks work with startups of all stages day in and day out, so they understand the needs of startups and scale-ups and can help you with branding, marketing, and legal services, to financial planning, technology resources, and more. Alex Chalmers will introduce these partners and share how they help our startups.
Thanks, Brandon. Let's dive into discussion with each of our cohort partners. First up, we welcome Dave Finkling from Anders CPAs and Advisors. Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great, Alex. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, sir. Right, some questions. What stage of companies, startups do you work with?
So great question, Alex. And not to give you too wide of a range, but we work with startups and early stage companies all the way from the back of the napkin all the way to exit. So we have companies that we literally help launch from day one to companies that we're taking through B rounds and C rounds and thereafter. So literally the entire spectrum is where our team has expertise.
Perfect. And okay, so for Anders, what expertise and value do you bring to the program and to startups looking to apply to future cohorts?
I think to the program itself, to Stadia Ventures, I think one of the biggest value adds is the individual coaching and mentoring we do for all of the companies. So we have the opportunity in each cohort to meet with each company and help them whatever stage they're at. So if it's literally the foundational stages, helping them through those basic questions on setting up a QuickBooks account and setting up a chart of accounts and setting up a capital table. But some of the later stage Stadia companies, we're actually coaching them through the later funding rounds, maybe getting ready for the A or getting ready for the B. So we offer that to all the portfolio companies of Stadia through our coaching. And then individually, if we engage with a Stadia portfolio company, kind of all the services we offer, all of our startups are on the table.
Okay, perfect. And so why did Anders get involved with Stadia, and what's the experience been like so far?
So I'm sure you'll get a lot of folks that answer the same way that have been involved with the group for the entire time. How could you not get involved with the original founders, Tim and Art, back in the day? So our firm has just a fantastic relationship with Tim and Art that predates the foundation of Stadia through our work with the St. Louis University Entrepreneurship Center, which is where Tim Hayden used to reside. So Tim asked us to look at this pitch deck that he and Art were working on for back in the day called the Stadia Group. So we saw this initial pitch deck and said, there's no way we can't get involved and work with Tim and Art. And now with you and Brandon, with Joe, with Dana, with all the great partners at Stadia, how could we not continue to stay involved?
Thanks, Dave. Now we welcome Kelly Caviglia from Bridgebank. Hello, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Nice to see you. We're going to get into some questions. What stage of startups companies do you work with?
We work with all stages, anywhere from we just got incorporated all the way through IPO.
Right. So for Bridgebank, what expertise and value do you bring to the program and to startups looking to apply to future cohorts?
So we are a startup and technology focused bank only. That's all we do every day, all day, is work with startups. On the early stage side of things, specifically for Stadia companies and those looking to apply, we work with companies that are moving from overseas and incorporating here in the US. We work with domestic companies and those that are just starting to scale their businesses and provide them with the resources to do so, like up to 3 years, no fees, what's called banking with benefits, which is just, additional resources through our ecosystem and discounts and partnerships that they otherwise may not have access to. And the idea is really to grow alongside them so that when they do get ready for venture debt down the line, once they've raised a round, then we can help them with that as well. It's really establishing a relationship that you can tap into for things beyond just pure banking products, and see us as an advisor and help throughout the growth of your startup.
Perfect. Okay, so why did Bridgebank get involved with Stadia?
Personally, I study sport management, so it was of a lot of interest to me that you guys are so immersed in sports and esports, which is becoming such a huge industry. I really liked the international aspect of it as well. Seeing that you guys are not just focused on one geographic region really, I think, allows startups who would otherwise maybe not have access to these resources, and now they have a broader network because of Stadia.
Thanks, Kelly. Next up, we have Alex Walker from Daedalus. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hey, real good, Alex. How are you doing?
Good, thank you, sir. Right. First question for you. What stage of startups companies do you work with?
Yeah, so we work with companies in many different stages. It's just that what we're doing for them looks a little bit different. So on the front end of things, we're trying to make sure the person is still communicating with themselves, the founder, and that we try and tie the person's personal life and situation into the fact that they're a founder so that they can keep in mind what a good exit might look like for them and what they plan to do afterwards. And then the second phase is once people are kind of reaching that exit point, we make sure that they're crossing all the T's, dotting the I's, and exiting on the terms that they'd like to, and making the most of that exit.
Okay. For Daedalus, what expertise and value do you bring to the program and to startups looking to apply to future cohorts?
Yeah, so one of the things that people have seemed to appreciate the most is kind of taking a step back a little bit. And so much of these people's lives is moving a million miles an hour, and it's day by day, hour by hour, and only focusing on them as the founder, not a person with a family and a life outside of the business. And so just taking that step back to frame up why you started this business and what the vision is for it and what the vision is after you exit, if that's part of the plan, is really the perspective that sometimes people need.
Okay, why did Daedalus get involved with Stadia, and what has the experience been like so far?
Yes, so Daedalus and Stadia have had a long relationship. We love being a part of it. It's part of it is just personal interest, right? Sports and technology are always two things that I've paid a lot of attention to ever since I was a kid. And so being a part of getting to meet all these incredible entrepreneurs and getting to know the businesses they're starting was really exciting and fun for us to be a part of. And then knowing that we're making an impact, and, you know, when people pour so much of their lives and so much work into being an entrepreneur, that we just think it's so important that they get out of it what they deserve. And our main role is helping make that happens. So all around, it's just been an awesome experience.
Thanks, Alex. Now we welcome Kate DeLeo, brand architect. How are you, Kate?
I'm doing well, Alex, and you?
Very well, thank you. Right, some questions. What stage of startups, companies do you work with?
Great question. I traditionally work with startups that are between that pre-seed, seed, and Series A stage.
Okay, and so for you, what expertise and value do you bring to the program and to startups looking to apply to future cohorts?
Sure. So the work that I do is brand messaging. So what I do is come in and help organizations understand how do they need to craft their message in order to get more prospects and investors to the right table at the right time. Specifically, what that's going to mean is taking a look from top to bottom at every piece of their messaging from a sales standpoint and an investor standpoint to ensure that it really speaks to the core value that they deliver.
Okay, thank you. And so why did you get involved with Stadia, and what's the experience been like so far?
I got involved with Stadia because of just the reputation that this organization has had, as well as my personal passion and experience working with sports and esports companies over the years. I've been in business for about 10 years, and I've had the pleasure of working with a number of startups in that space, as well as a strong background working with technology-related companies. And so Stadia seemed like a natural fit. I love their approach. I loved the accelerator model that Stadia particularly pulls together. It is different. It is hands-on. It is really involved for both myself and for those cohort companies. And to me, that's what I was looking for, was a true partnership. This experience, to be honest, has been tremendous. I've been a partner with Stadia for a few years now, and there's no going back. I look at Stadia as truly a partner for my organization for the near and the long term.
Thanks, Kate. Now we welcome Kat Duncan from Fenwick. Hello, Kat, how are you?
Good. Great to be here today, Alex.
Good to see you. So we're going to get into some questions. Firstly, what stage of startups, companies do you work with?
Yeah, so we work with startups that range from literally like just someone who's come up with an idea and hasn't even incorporated or, even thought about an entity formation, all the way to, late stage and thinking about going public. Our bread and butter is, again, like wanting to be there with founders kind of right when they're coming up with the idea to, help them incorporate, think about the first financing round and think about all of those kind of critical early stage decisions that they're going to be making that will have an impact on their company going forward.
For Fenwick, what expertise and value do you bring to the program and to startups looking to apply to future cohorts?
So Fenwick is actually a pretty unique law firm in the sense that we specialize, and our bread and butter is mainly with all technology companies. That's all we do. And we do everything that kind of touches on a technology company. So we do everything from the general corporate work to the financing, employment issues, intellectual property, licensing, trademarks, blockchain, Web3. All of that startup companies that would be participating in the Stadia cohort, those would be their predominant legal issues, and that's exactly what we specialize in. And we frankly work with so many companies and investors that we also bring to bear, tremendous just knowledge in terms of having so many reps doing working with thousands of startup companies currently. that it ends up being a tremendous benefit to companies that come to work with us, just simply because we can tell you what's market, and leverage forms and just leverage a really deep bench of attorneys that work with startup companies.
Perfect. Okay. So look, third question. Why did Fenwick get involved with Stadia, and what has the experience been like so far?
Yeah, so Fenwick got involved with Stadia just because we really love the idea of working with companies, the types of companies that Stadia is looking to attract. We have a pretty deep gaming practice and a lot of expertise when it comes to working with gaming developers, studios, publishers, and anyone who's, for instance, like on the ancillary or on the periphery of gaming. It's just something that we really enjoy. Both our attorneys enjoy it kind of personally, where a lot of us are all gamers, and then we do it professionally, where we represent just tons of gaming companies. So working with Stadia just offers us an opportunity to get access to kind of early stage kind of gaming companies and to work with a program that is curating and helping these companies grow, develop, fundraise. And advance to becoming, the future unicorns of the gaming world.
Thanks, Kat. Now we welcome up Justin Fortier from FYC Labs. Hello, Justin.
How's it going, Alex?
Good, thank you, sir. We're going to dive into some questions. So, first question: what stage of startups companies do you work with?
We like to say we work with the 0 to 1. So we like to bring people up to their MVP and get them to that go to market and bring their products to life.
So for FYC Labs, what expertise and value do you bring to the program and to startups looking to apply to future cohorts?
We're founders ourselves. We've started SaaS companies, B2C companies. So we relate really well to the founder, and we bring the tech partnership. We bring thought partnership and absolutely some of the best designers in the world and some of the best developers. So we bring that technical kind of founder by your side.
Okay, great. And so then why did FYC Labs get involved with Stadia?
The opportunity to work with really well-vetted startups and a great group of mentors and different portfolio companies was really intriguing to us. As we got to know Alex and we got to know the team, we just found it to be a great fit. The stage at which all the companies come into Stadia is exactly who we've been and who we work with all the time. So it's been a perfect fit so far, and we actually can relate and empathize with all the struggles and all the fun. So that's, to us, a really big deal, is to be able to come in and be right in line with the values and the direction each of these companies are headed. So for me, that was a big thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Justin. Now we welcome Bob here from the University of North Texas. Hello, Bob.
Good to see you.
Right, we're going to get into some questions. How do you engage with startups at UNT?
At UNT, we've been working really hard to create one of the best sport business programs in the world. We're very ambitious about that, and we don't hide that ambition. Startups are an essential part of it, directly in helping them, providing pipelines for our students to intern, to help out, to get jobs, but also to serve them and our own partners, such as the Dallas Cowboys, the PGA of America, and all those sport franchises in Dallas, in learning about what the newest trends, innovations are in sports technology.
Perfect. And so for UNT, what expertise and value do you bring to the program and to startups looking to apply to future Stadia cohorts?
In short, of course, we have a lot of students who always want to work on their resume, build on their competencies, build their network, and they can help out, whether that's through volunteering, whether that's through class projects. All of our sport business concentration courses are done with industry partners. So they have to work for real clients, solving real problems. And that can be very useful for a startup to have somebody focused for an entire semester on their company and how they can help them. Directly related to that, of course, is the research. And instead of hiring a very expensive consultancy firm, you can go to a university, whether that's us or any other university, and help with figuring out the landscape, the competition, the trends, and everything related to that.
Okay, great. And final question: why did UNT get involved with Stadia, and what's the experience been like so far?
We got involved with Stadia because we see Stadia as one of the most prestigious sports tech accelerators, venture capitalist company in this space worldwide. So for us to link with Stadia Ventures and through them also link our students with some of the most incredible mentors, judges, investors, startup entrepreneurs, it's an incredible opportunity. Our students intern to help out with the cohorts, running those. And we feel blessed to work with Stadia, and we enjoy every moment of it.
Thanks, Bob. And that closes out our spotlight on Stadia's partners.
Now I'd like to pass things over to my partner, Joe Pimmel, who is going to visit with some investors from the Stadia family.
Thanks, Brandon. We are so fortunate to work with many active early stage investors in the Stadia ecosystem. I'm really thrilled to hear from two of them today, Nick Fragnito, partner at Shorewind Capital, and Ian Seltzer, principal at Pierce Yates Ventures. Gentlemen, thrilled to have you here today. Would you mind just taking a minute to introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about your firm and what you're investing in. And Nick, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I'm a partner at Shorewind Capital. We're a $25 million early stage venture fund. So seed and Series A, focusing on human performance. So to us, that's fitness and wellness, mental, physical health, time optimization, sports tech, and sustainability. So we're happy to invest at companies at either stage across any of those verticals.
Awesome, thanks. Ian, what about you?
Hey, so thanks for having us, Joe. As you mentioned, I'm a principal at Pierce Yates Ventures. We're based here in New York City, and our focus is doing early stage investing, predominantly on the seed round, at companies within the esports, sports, and fintech verticals. And I guess, like most of us on this call, during the past 2 years, we have spread our wings and have expanded into looking at Web3.
Of course, that's one of the buzzwords of the day, right?
Exactly. So we either have vision or we've collectively lost our marbles along with the rest of the world. So only time will tell, that's for sure.
Probably a mixture of both. So, well, let's roll into a little bit more detail about kind of your activities, right? So, Ian, we'll start with you. How many startups are you and your team at Pierce Yates looking at in a given year? And then how many investments are you typically making in a given year?
So I would say in terms of looking at inbound deal flow, that we're looking at about 25 different ventures per month. And where that nets out to is about 6 to 8 investments per year.
Are you investing locally here in North America, or do you invest globally as well?
So I think it's actually one of those questions that, things have evolved. And certainly the past 2 years of, the pandemic and everything else going on in the world has sort of, an unexpected consequences that, it's things in a world without travel, but where Zoom is sort of the normal and default. It's actually led to things being a lot more globalized for us. So I think that, if we were chatting 2 years ago, the answer would have been that, our preference is to invest in companies that are part of the New York ecosystem. It's sort of our backyard. And there is that old school investment philosophy of you should only invest in companies you could ride your bike to. But I do think that that's gone the way of the dodo, where we have, we've been really bullish on kind of expanding out into, the rest of North America. Also have a number of portfolio companies in the UK. And I'm actively involved with advising for a number of startups within the esports world over in the EU. So one of those strange outgrowths of the pandemic, right, is that in a world where business travel has taken the backseat to just being able to do great things like this, like hop on Zoom with folks like you, it's kind of ironically made the world a smaller place as we sort of look at geographic scope of our investments. So it's all exciting. It's certainly a brave new world, but we're pumped to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Nick, we'll turn it over to you now. Just talk about kind of the size of the deal flow you're looking at, on an annual basis, how many investments you're making. And then again, sort of the same question as with Ian, are you investing just here in North America, or are you investing globally?
Sure. Yeah. So a little background on our fund to start probably is helpful. So we launched after the 4th of July last year. So we're a little over 9 months old at this point. And we've reviewed about 400 pitch decks so far, which that's not quite exhaustive for all the companies we've seen, because there's some demo days that have 394 companies in them. We don't. From there, it's kind of into calls with companies, and then from that kind of 400 pitch decks, we've made 9 investments. So pace is about 1 per month so far, although we're not trying to stick to that by any means. And then regarding geography, we our mandate is within the U.S. So we're mainly just looking at companies anywhere within the United States.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So it's interesting, given that you're both focusing on a little bit different aspects of the ecosystem. Both of you, though, have invested in Stadia portfolio companies in the past. Can you talk a little bit about aspects of what you've noticed about Stadia portfolio companies? What makes them unique? What maybe separates them a little bit from the rest of the pack? And Nick, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, sure. And for context, so we invested in 2 Stadia portfolio companies, Nix and Outdoor Access. And to us, what really stood out amongst those 2 is compared to other companies in our portfolio are really the founders. They're both just incredibly driven, experts in their market. They know the customers inside and out, and they're building problems that are very specifically trying to solve their pain points versus other companies that may try to fit a cool product into a certain market.
Duly noted. Ian, what about you? Any thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, well, to Nick's point, I certainly think that, a constant thread and the full disclosure that we've done 2 companies now with Stadia, which both have been an absolute delight, FanCam and Gameway. And I think that, as Nick was saying, it really is the founders that stick out. And I think that there's a great culture that Joe, you, Brandon, and the rest of the team out in St. Louis have really cultivated, where, it really is just a group of founders who are no nonsense individuals and also just generally tend to be great folks to work with. So, I really tip my hat to you and the team for really, having that be sort of a constant thing with every portfolio company that we've interacted with has come through sort of the Stadia pipeline over there. So that's been, in terms of a more personal take on things, that's been a fantastic, piece of the connective tissue working with Stadia. And then I think that, when we kind of look at it from more of just assessing the actual ventures and startups as a business, it's something that we know that you guys, and we're involved with a lot of, accelerators, both in the US and globally, that really Stadia has constructed a best-in-class program for these founders to kind of go through. And certainly whether it's setting them up with folks within your network or even the mentorship side of the program, we've now had the pleasure through advising for you guys to see sort of, companies make that full journey of going through the program and making it out into the ecosystem. And, it really is a sort of fantastic run to be able to see that sort of, maturity and the growth that startups had, and then being able to sort of plug them in to your network of advisors or whatnot. It's truly something that is unique in the world. And, once again, I cannot stress enough, best in class.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that, Ian. I think as both of you gentlemen know, that the secret to our success is all of the incredible people that we surround our companies with. And that's the difference, is we get as many brains working as possible on a project and help bring them to market more efficiently, right? So, but very kind of you to say that. And for this next question here, Ian, I think we'll lead off with you. So, given that both of you are focusing on slightly different segments within the sports space itself, can you just talk about maybe 1 or 2 trends that you're seeing in the areas where you've been investing lately that you'd be comfortable sharing with the audience?
Yeah, certainly. So I would say that, let's just chat within the esports world, and we could start off there. So for context, we've been doing early stage investing in the esports world for now 6 years. So as the joke goes within the space, esports years are like dog years. So technically we're getting ancient at this point. But I think, something that I've been seeing a lot over the better part of the past 3 years is that there are a lot of startups within the space that are sort of third party and kind of working off of video game publisher IP. And when we look at it, there are actually a lot of similarities to sort of the traditional media and entertainment world and what you're seeing with movie studios, how, your Marvels or Star Warses of the world will release, a few tentpole titles that have hundreds of millions of dollars to produce or whatnot. Things aren't that different within the video game world, and surprisingly, that hasn't changed with all the disruption that's gone on in the media world over the past 2 years. And we found it to be pretty difficult to sort of, navigate that relationship where a lot of startups are creating third-party services functioning on public APIs. And at any moment, the IP holder, or in this case, the game studio, can literally flick a switch and shut down that entire ecosystem should they choose. So that's something where we've, tried to avoid it and kind of think about investments within, whether it's esports or the larger video gaming / lifestyle space. They're kind of complementary to the IP rights holders and video game publishers of this world. So actually, I think that a perfect case study of sort of building out this investment thesis was our investment alongside you guys in Gameway over there, where, sort of looking what Jordan and the team have built out, essentially for those who aren't familiar, doing luxury video game lounges in airports around the US. And that's something that we viewed as being pretty unique in the sense of saying that, like, hey, this is something that if you were a video game publisher and you were looking at cultivating engagement with a younger fan base or reaching a fan base that you wouldn't traditionally be able to get through marketing channels, that was something that was complementary to sort of the video game side of things and looking at how they look at the world through sort of a marketing prism. So when we saw that one, sort of something clicked in our heads and we said, this is going to be a great one. And we sort of went for it. So that was really fantastic. I would say for, trend number 2 over there, we've been, going pretty deep on the sports betting side of things for nearly 3 years at this point. And something that we're certainly seeing within that space is a lot of startups within that vertical are basically in the business of raising a round and then spending most of that on customer acquisition. And that's just something that we don't see as being a sustainable business. At least for us, we've been looking at things through a much more regulatory and compliance side of things, of who's going to make sense of it, who's going to be the adults in the room. And on that end of things, we invested in a company called US Integrity, which is doing exactly that for, all of the relevant stakeholders, whether that's leagues, teams, the relevant government, stakeholders and whatnot. So, those are just kind of 2 off the top of my head that, immediately come to mind.
That's great. Really appreciate the context there too. Obviously, we're thrilled about what Jordan's doing. Some exciting stuff there. But Nick, to kind of transition to you a little bit here, you've invested in a couple of the more unique companies in our portfolio. So not to say necessarily you have to comment on like an outdoor access, but what are some things that you're observing in your day to day?
Yeah. One of the things we're paying attention to a lot right now, specifically like in kind of the fitness and wellness space, is consolidation and business models kind of shifting to be a little bit more horizontal. So recently, a company called Span was acquired by 8 Sleep, kind of to bring a coaching component to the bedroom, basically to help people sleep. So kind of expanding their platform that way. Company called FitLab has been rolling up brands, acquired 3 different brands, announced that recently to create kind of a more comprehensive offering in hybrid at home / in gym like customer experience. And we think this is kind of just the beginning, likely due to a lot of maybe forward growth from COVID. And then we kind of think the next space for consolidation is going to be in maybe the fitness or influencer creator platforms and marketplaces. We recently saw like Interval fold within this space, and Talent Hack kind of made a pivot. So we're paying close attention to us, and that's top of mind. We haven't made any bets in that world yet, but we're eyes wide open and definitely paying close attention. And then on a slightly more maybe positive note, last year we saw several kind of like wearable device aggregation startups being built, where they're kind of taking data from, customers or people these days are wearing, watches and Whoops and all sorts of different things to monitor different health metrics and fitness metrics. And so there were a lot of companies that were building APIs to connect these, both within like apps in a B2B play, but also for B2C to kind of tell customers like, hey, like today you should take it easy, or today maybe do a hard workout. And so these are kind of just coming to market now, and saturating a little bit more. So in addition to that, so some are kind of putting analytics on top. So telling people like on the B2B side, making it easier for them to actually, use this kind of data. And so that plus, Whoop recently announced that they're opening their API to Apple Health. So there's another access point. So we're kind of excited to see like what people build on top of this now that there's all this extra data and access to it. So we're paying really close attention there as well.
It's really interesting. You brought up a couple of fascinating things. One is the race, it seems, to try to capture and measure every piece of data that comes off of a human body, right? And for us, obviously, we're looking at it from an athletic performance and, and kind of a wellness and recovery perspective. But what's your just real quick take on something like that, right? Like, we hear about these things now. They're talking about sleep, obviously, is a big deal. Gut health is another big one. The other day, we were having a whole conversation around mushrooms, right? And the value that mushrooms can provide. So again, not to put you on the spot, but what are your thoughts on kind of that race to capture all of this information off the human body?
Yeah, and not to tie this directly back to Stadia, but that was our thesis in investing in Nix, which is a wearable hydration monitor. And that was kind of, to us, one of the last frontiers of things that wasn't being measured was how much are you sweating? What's the composition of that sweat? So from there, we were kind of like, okay, now we're measuring a lot of things. What happens when we put them all together? And can we get a broader picture of like health from that? So there's definitely a couple things that still need to be measured, like the brain. Like if someone can make like a fitness tracker for your brain that tells me like, hey, like Nick's not going to be learning a lot today, or something like that. I think that's probably in the future, but yeah, I think figuring out what we can do with all this data is kind of the next step.
That's something that we think a lot about here. In fact, Brandon, my partner, is a fanatic about Whoop and measuring his indices, as he calls them. But to your point about measuring activity, measuring performance, not just at the most elite level, but for everyday people, and how can this technology be brought kind of to the mass market? So it really is a fascinating time to see how this all plays out. And then to your final point, great, we have all this data. What do we do with it, right? It's kind of that question of who cares, right? And how do you sort of leverage it, cultivate it, and deploy it in a responsible and efficient way? So interesting times we're living in for sure.
Yeah, and if I could, what I would like to add to that is personalizing it. Like how is Joe's data different from mine, and what does that mean in terms of like what we should do about it? So I think that's something that we're definitely paying attention to.
That's cool. Well, I appreciate your perspective on that. So last question, pretty easy one, hopefully. When you think about potential founders that are looking at the Stadia program or considering it, what would be one piece of advice you would give them as they're going through that thought process and thinking about ways that they could participate or why it might make sense? And this time, Ian, we'll start with you, okay?
Yeah. So, of course, there are sort of, the fundamentals on that side of things. Is there alignment between, what their goals are as a business and sort of, what Stadia is up to and sort of your governing philosophy and whatnot within the sports and esports world. But I think more so than anything, it's more of an intangible piece of advice, if you'll let me get away with it, where I think it's the best thing, and really what I think about when I'm recommending founders for future cohorts and whatnot is it a culture fit? And I think that is the most important thing for determining a company's success, and certainly it's something that I've observed over working with you guys over the past few years. Is that there is certainly that sense of camaraderie, both amongst companies going through the cohort and those that are alumni of the program over there. That I just think that unless unless there is a definite overlap and sort of culture fit over there, that seems like something that really differentiates, those where it may go from being maybe you should look at Stadia, see what they're up to you guys should definitely look at this and definitely apply.
Well, but boy, do we appreciate those referrals from people like you who understand what makes us tick, right? And the kind of founders that we're looking for. So appreciate that, Ian. And Nick, you want to bring us home here? What's some wise words you can share with potential founders?
Sure. Yeah. I think there's a lot of accelerators out there. And so, founders have a lot of choice. And I think it's where do they want to end up? And if that is in sports and fitness and wellness, to me, that's kind of Stadia is really the only choice for that. And so really thinking, if that's where they want to be, like, to Ian's points, the network, the kind of alumni that have been through there, and then obviously everyone that on the advisory panel that can help those businesses grow. If that's somewhere you want to be, definitely consider it. And I'll also want to touch on what I mentioned earlier in, what we've seen with the kind of Stadia founders and them just intimately knowing their customers and those pain points. And I think like having such a strong network of other founders, alumni, and again, those advisors, like you can really fine tune what that is, and then try to build something to address that. And if founders are able to do that within a small slice of a really big market, I think that really sets the businesses up for success.
No question. That's a huge part of our roadmap going forward with over 65 portfolio companies now. That community of founders has become such a critically huge part of what Stadia can offer these groups. So really appreciate the context there, Nick. So, well, that wraps up our panel for today, folks. Really just want to say thank you so much to both of you for your insights and for your continued support of Stadia, in the past and now as we go forward. So thank you very much. Back to you, Brandon.
Well, that about wraps up today's show. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you gained a strong understanding of what Stadia Ventures is all about and how our program works. Next steps typically look like this. After an application window closes, know that you'll be in a competitive environment with hundreds of other companies vying for one of 5 spots in the next cohort. Between our industry friends and our internal team, that field is narrowed down to about 20 companies. We call that crowdsourced due diligence. If you make it to the top 20, you'll be invited to a 1-hour video call with the Stadia team a couple weeks later. We want to get to know you and your team as people. From there, if you make it to the top 10, you'll participate in a live finalist pitch day surrounded by hundreds of judges in the Stadia network. About 2 weeks after finalist pitch day, we will invite 4 to 6 companies to join the cohort and be part of the Stadia family. These are the businesses and founders that we believe we can help the most who are eager for help. Each will receive up to a $100,000 investment. If you think you're ready to apply for an upcoming cohort, click the link below.